You are not hard to satisfy. You are being trained to stay unsatisfied. And once you see the mechanism, you cannot unsee it because it explains that specific kind of restlessness you feel, even on days when nothing is actually wrong. Quick thing before we go deeper. We are building toward 1,000 subscribers, and your subscription genuinely helps us reach more people who want psychology that actually explains things instead of decorating them. If this hits a nerve, hit the like button too. It tells the algorithm this is worth putting in front of the right minds. Now, if you have been walking around with this low-level sense of, is this it? Even after you get what you said you wanted, this is not a personality flaw. It is not that you are ungrateful. It is not even mainly about consumerism, although that is part of the machinery. Here is what is actually happening. Modern society quietly changed what your brain treats as enough, not your standards, your calibration. Most people never connect these dots because they talk about dissatisfaction like it is a mood. I want to talk about it like it is a system with inputs, feedback loops, and predictable outputs. And when you understand it, you stop moralizing your feelings and start reading them like data. Let me start with the first mechanism. Modern life replaced needs with prediction problems. Your brain is basically an inference engine. It is constantly trying to predict what will happen next because prediction is survival. In a stable environment, prediction is easy. Your effort leads to a result. The result lasts long enough to matter, and your nervous system learns, I can close loops. Satisfaction, psychologically, is often the felt sense of a loop closing. Now notice the pattern in modern life. Your loops do not close. They get reopened, reframed, or invalidated. You finish a task and the inbox refills. You hit a goal and the goalposts move. You buy the thing and the next version is announced. You post something and the feedback trickles in unpredictably. Even your entertainment is episodic, serialized, endless. That is not accidental. It is an environment optimized for re-engagement, not completion. And when completion is rare, your brain does something very rational. It stays in a seeking state. This is why people confuse dopamine with pleasure. Dopamine is not the happy chemical. It is more like the keep-going signal. It spikes with anticipation, novelty, and uncertainty. In behavioral science, variable reward schedules are famously sticky. Slot machines are the cartoon version. Social media is the adult version. But the deeper point is this. If your daily life is structured around partial reinforcement, your baseline becomes tension, not contentment. Think about this for a second. When was the last time you did something that had a clean ending? Not just stopping because you had to, but finishing in a way your body recognized as done. Some of you will instantly feel a little sad at that question. That is information. Now here is where it gets interesting. Dissatisfaction is not only coming from too much wanting, it is coming from your brain being forced to run too many open prediction loops simultaneously. That creates a background hum of error signals. And you interpret that hum as something is missing, even when the missing thing is simply closure. Second mechanism. Modern society monetizes your internal comparison engine, and it does it by changing the unit of comparison. In small human groups, status comparisons were local and slow. You compared yourself to people you actually knew in contexts you actually participated in. Your mind had constraints. It could not compare your Tuesday morning to someone else's highlight reel from 3 continents away, edited by a team, filtered, staged, and then served to you at the exact moment your willpower is lowest. Social comparison theory is old, but what is new is the scale and the compression. Your brain still uses relative rank as a proxy for safety and belonging. That is evolutionary. But modern feeds collapse context. They take outcomes without showing inputs. They show bodies without genetics, wealth without inheritance, confidence without coaching, love without the fight that happened 10 minutes before the photo. So your brain runs a calculation it was never built to run. Given what I see, where do I stand? And because the sample you are given is biased upward, you will nearly always stand below. But the more poisonous part is subtler. It is that comparison used to be multidimensional. You could be poor but respected, awkward but useful, not attractive but trusted, not ambitious but loved. In other words, your identity had multiple currencies. Modern society reduces currencies. It pushes everything into a few visible metrics: follower counts, income signals, aesthetics, productivity, prestige. When the number of currencies shrinks, dissatisfaction rises, because any loss in one domain feels like a loss in your whole self. Let me show you what I mean. If you live in a world with 10 ways to be winning, you can have a bad week in one and still feel fundamentally okay. If you live in a world with 2 ways to be winning, a bad week becomes an identity threat. That is chronic dissatisfaction, not wanting more but feeling less. And because the system benefits from you feeling less, it keeps you in comparison. It serves you people who are just close enough to be threatening, not movie stars you can dismiss, but peers. People your age, your city, your field. The algorithm learns what makes you quietly self-contemptuous and then hands you more of it. If you have ever felt your mood drop for no clear reason after scrolling, it was not random. Your nervous system was doing rank math. Now stay with me, because the next mechanism recontextualizes everything. The problem is not only that society shows you more, it is that society trains you to outsource the feeling of enough to external signals. Third mechanism, we moved from internal satiety to external validation, and the brain treats that as unstable nutrition. There is a concept in neuroscience and psychology called interoception, your ability to sense internal states: hunger, fullness, fatigue, calm. People think dissatisfaction is mental. Often it is interoceptive confusion. You cannot feel what you feel, so you reach for what you can measure. Modern life is terrible for interoception. You eat engineered foods designed to bypass fullness cues. You sit under artificial light, confusing circadian rhythms. You live in constant microstress, which makes your body misread signals. And then you track everything: steps, sleep scores, productivity metrics, streaks. Tracking is not evil. The issue is when your sense of well-being becomes a dashboard. A dashboard can never tell you enough. It can only tell you more or less. And when enough is not a felt internal stop point, you default to social stop points: likes, money, milestones, badges, titles. Those are volatile. That volatility produces anxiety. And your brain has a simple rule: anxiety feels like a problem to solve. So you chase the next external signal to quiet the anxiety. Temporary relief. Then the signal decays. Then you chase again. Notice the pattern here. It is not that you enjoy the reward. It is that you are trying to stop an internal alarm you cannot locate. This is why even successful people can feel empty. They are not empty. They are underfed in the only way that actually stabilizes satisfaction. They do not trust their own internal satiety cues anymore. They trust the scoreboard. And now we hit the fourth mechanism, which is the one that usually makes people go quiet when they finally see it. Modern society sells you the idea of unlimited choice, but psychologically, unlimited choice functions like chronic loss. There is research on choice overload, sure. But the deeper mechanism is counterfactual living. Every time you choose one path, your brain automatically generates the alternative paths you did not choose. In a constrained environment, there are not many alternatives, so the counterfactuals are weak. In a high-choice environment, the counterfactuals are vivid. You pick a career. Your brain simulates 5 others. You choose a partner. Your brain simulates the thousands you did not meet. You spend your evening reading. Your brain simulates the party you skipped, the workout you did not do, the side hustle you are falling behind on. So even when you choose well, you experience a shadow grief, not dramatic grief, micro grief. The quiet sense that somewhere there was a better timeline. And modern platforms intensify this by showing you other timelines constantly. Someone is always traveling, always building, always glowing, always winning. The feed is basically an infinite counterfactual generator, and your mind treats that as evidence that your current life is a compromise. But here is the twist. A human life is supposed to be a compromise, not a tragedy, a trade-off. Satisfaction comes from committing to trade-offs long enough for them to produce meaning. And chronic dissatisfaction comes from being trained to treat every trade-off as a mistake. Now flip everything I just said, because this is the midpoint insight that ties the entire machine together. Modern society does not just create dissatisfaction by giving you too little. It creates dissatisfaction by removing legitimate endings, legitimate rankings, legitimate internal signals, and a legitimate commitment. In other words, it removes finality. No finality in work, because the work is endless. No finality in identity, because your brand is always editable. No finality in relationships, because the market is always open. No finality in knowledge, because there is always another video, another thread, another take. And without finality, your nervous system cannot downshift. Think about the last time you felt deeply satisfied, not entertained, not relieved, satisfied. It probably came with some form of finality, a finished project, a hard conversation completed, a meal after real hunger, a deep sleep after real exertion, a walk that ended somewhere meaningful. That is the core. Satisfaction is a nervous system event, and modern society is structured to prevent that event from stabilizing, because a stabilized person is harder to manipulate. So what do you do with this without turning it into another generic, just be mindful speech? Here is the useful framework I have discovered for actually diagnosing dissatisfaction in real time. You ask one question, and you force yourself to answer honestly. Is my dissatisfaction coming from lack or from leakage? Lack means something is genuinely missing: rest, connection, competence, safety, autonomy. Leakage means the satisfaction you should have is being drained by one of the systems we just described: open loops, comparison compression, outsourced satiety, or counterfactual overload. Because the intervention depends on the source. If you treat leakage like lack, you will keep consuming more inputs to fix a problem that is actually a broken feedback loop. More content, more purchases, more goals. And the emptiness persists because you are pouring water into a bucket with holes. So you identify the hole. If it is open loops, you need closure rituals, not new ambitions. You deliberately create small, clean endings. A walk with no podcast. A task finished and marked. A day with a done list instead of a to-do list. Your brain needs proof that loops can close. If it is comparison compression, you widen your currencies again. You create domains where you can win privately: skill mastery, craft, physical capability, being dependable, being kind, being brave in small ways. Not as a slogan, as a strategic diversification of self-worth. If it is outsourced satiety, you retrain interoception. You practice noticing what enough feels like in the body. Enough food, enough work, Enough social time? You stop when you still can, not when you are forced to. That is how you rebuild the internal stop signal. If it is counterfactual overload, you reduce timeline exposure. Not because alternatives are evil, but because your brain cannot metabolize infinite possibility without turning it into regret. Commitment is not a prison. Commitment is a psychological technology for making meaning possible. Now here is the ultimate insight, the pattern behind the patterns. Chronic dissatisfaction is the emotional output of a society that treats humans as perpetual upgraders instead of finite organisms. A finite organism needs rhythms, effort and rest, seeking and finding, hunger and fullness, solitude and belonging. Modern systems flatten rhythms into constant engagement. Constant engagement looks productive. It looks ambitious. But psychologically it is a form of captivity because it never lets the satisfaction circuit complete. So the real rebellion is not positivity. The real rebellion is finality. It is learning to end things on purpose, to declare enough without needing permission from a metric, to live in a way where your nervous system can actually land. If you want a simple test after this video, do this tonight. Ask yourself, what did I complete today that my body can recognize as complete? Not what did I do? What did I finish? If the answer is nothing, do not judge yourself. Just notice what kind of society you are living in, and then notice the next time you feel that familiar itch for more. Instead of obeying it automatically, ask, is this desire or is this a loop that refuses to close? Because once you can tell the difference, dissatisfaction stops being your identity and starts being a signal you can decode. If this changed how you see your own restlessness, I would genuinely like to hear what mechanism you recognize most in yourself in the comments. And remember this sentence because it is the whole video in one line. You do not need a better life to feel satisfied. You need a life that actually ends its moments.